Something is hiding beneath the waves. Something ancient. Something biologically impossible. They have been seen and encountered for thousands of years across the world, arousing wonder and curiosity, no less in our own day. Today, we will look at the top 5 mermaid sightings. Number 5 on our list took place in early July 1833, off the Shetland Islands in Scotland, when several experienced deep-sea fishermen pulled up a remarkable catch. Here follows their sworn, legally binding deposition, given in the presence of Arthur Nicholson, then the Justice of the Peace of Lochend. In the presence of Arthur Nicholson of Lochend, Justice of the Peace, William Manson, Daniel Manson, John Henderson, residing in Cullevo in the parish of North Yell, who being sworn deposit that in the beginning of July last, they, at the deep-sea fishing from 30 to 60 miles from land, and about midnight, took up a creature attached by the back of the neck to a hook, which was about 3 feet long, and about 30 inches in circumference at the broadest part, which was across the shoulders. From the navel upwards it resembled a human being, had breasts as large as those of a woman. Attached to the side were arms about 9 inches long, with wrists and hands like those of a human being, except that there were webs between the fingers for about half their length. The fingers were in number and shape like those of a man. The little arms were close on the outsides of the breasts, and on the corner of each shoulder was placed a fin of a round form which, when extended, covered both the breasts and the arms. The animal had a short neck, on which rested a head about the length of a man's, but not nearly so round, and somewhat pointed at the top. It had eyebrows without hair, and eyelids covering 2 small blue eyes, somewhat like those of a human being, not like those of a fish. It had no nose, but 2 orifices for blowing through. It had a mouth so large that when opened wide it would admit a man's fist. It had lips rather thicker than a man's, of a pure white color. There was no chin, but they think the lower jaw projected a little further than the upper one. There were no ears. The whole front of the animal was covered with skin, white as linen, the back with skin of a light gray color, like a fish. From the breasts the shape sloped towards the tail, close to which was only about 4 inches in circumference. The tail was flat, and consisted of 2 lobes which, when extended, might be 6 inches together in breadth, and were set at right angles with the face of the creature. It resembled the face of a halibut. The animal was very nearly round at the shoulders. It appeared to have shoulder bones and a hollow space between them. The diminution of size increased most rapidly from the navel, which might be 9 inches below the breasts. There was between the nostrils a thing that appeared to be a piece of gristle, about 9 inches long, and which resembled a thick bristle. There was a similar one on each side of the head, but not so long, which the animal had the power of moving backwards and forwards, and could make them meet on top of the skull. When the men spoke, the animal answered, and moved these bristles, which led them to suppose that the creature heard by means of them. They did not observe what sort of teeth the creature had, nor the parts of generation. There was no hair upon any part of its body, which was soft and slimy. There is an old opinion among fishermen that it is unlucky to kill a mermaid, and therefore, after having kept it in the boat for some time, they slipped it. All of which is the truth, so help me God. There are a number of things that strike me as interesting about this. Obviously, this encounter earns its inclusion here because of the extent to which the fishermen were able to closely and intimately examine the creature. It would seem that after hauling it up, the men actually held it and touched it. These were seasoned deep-sea fishermen native to the region. Doubtless, they were familiar enough with the aquatic wildlife to not mistake a baby manatee, pictured here, for an otherworldly creature, let alone while holding it. The fishermen's detailed description of the arms they felt and handled is entirely different from those of a manatee. Its head was also clearly different. There is, in fact, another creature which more strongly resembles what the fishermen brought up than a manatee. It has smooth, slimy, scaleless skin, nostrils, wide mouths, and strange sensory whiskers on its face. And it can grow to be the size of a man. The catfish. The whiskers are called barbels. They are found on the faces of some fish and turtles. But again, catfish do not have mammary glands, let alone navels. And they certainly do not have human arms with half-webbed human hands. Neither do their craniums in any way resemble what the fishermen described under oath. For number 4 on our list, we venture to the Isle of Man in 1810. You know of mermaids and the rare merman, but have you ever thought about mer-children? A letter written in December of that year relates how 3 tradesmen hunting seabirds discovered 2 apparent juvenile merfolk along the Calf of Man. The 3 had been drawn to the sound of a cat-like mewing coming from some nearby rocks. As they approached, 2 small forms came into view, which they immediately recognized as merfolk. Reads the letter. One of them was dead, and much lacerated by the violence with which it had been driven on shore during a strong gale of wind on the preceding night. The other was, however, conveyed to Douglas, where it still remains, and seems likely to do well. It is 1 foot 11 inches and 3/4 in length, from the crown of its head to the extremity of its tail, 5 inches across the shoulder. Its skin is of a very pale brown color, and the scales on its tail are tinged with violet. The hair, if it may be so called, on its head is of a light green cast. It is attached to the crown of the head, only hanging loose about the face, about 4 inches in length, very gelatinous to the touch, and somewhat resembling the green seaweed commonly growing on rocks. Its mouth is small, and has no appearance of teeth. It delights much in swimming about in a large tub of sea water, and feeds chiefly on mussels and other shellfish, which it devours with great avidity. It also now and then swallows small portions of milk and water when given to it in a quill. Though less attestable than the previous account, if we take it as true, it offers a rare look at a juvenile mermaid. It seems to be much more reminiscent of common merfolk descriptions with hair and scales. I find myself curious about its hair. I wonder whether it might not have been hair but filamentous algae, seen here. In some circumstances, algae can attach to sea life and continue to grow. But then, why would the algae be only on the head, of all places? Very strange, if true. Descriptions of its diet, or at least what it was willing to intake, are also fascinating. So what do you think? Was this letter trustworthy? If so, what are your thoughts on its algae-like hair? Number 3. The year was 1610. The place, St. John's Harbor, Newfoundland. Merchant, colonizer, writer, and the governor of Sir William Vaughan's colony, Captain Richard Whitburn, had the following sighting, which he shared with explorer William Hawkridge. Here follows Captain Whitburn's account. Now, also I will not omit to relate something of a strange creature that I first saw there in the year 1610. In a morning early, as I was standing by the waterside, in the harbour of St. John's, which I espied very swiftly to come swimming towards me, looking cheerfully, as it had been a woman, by the face, eyes, nose, mouth, chin, ears, neck, and forehead. It seemed to be so beautiful, and in those parts so well proportioned, having round about upon the head all blue streaks resembling hair, down to the neck, but certainly it was no hair, for I beheld it long, and another of my company also, yet living, that was not then far from me. And seeing the same coming so swiftly towards me, I stepped back, for it was come within the length of a long pike, which, when this strange creature saw that I went from it, it presently thereupon dived a little under water, and did swim towards the place where before I landed, whereby I beheld the shoulders and back down to the middle to be as square, white, and smooth as the back of a man, and from the middle to the hinder part, pointing in proportion like a broad hooked arrow. How it was proportioned in the fore part from the neck and shoulders I know not, but the same came shortly after under a boat, wherein one William Hawkridge, then my servant, was, that hath since been a captain in a ship to the East Indies, and is lately there employed again by Sir Thomas Smith in the like voyage. And the same creature did put both his hands upon the side of the boat, and did strive to come into him and others then in the said boat, whereat they were afraid, and one of them struck it a full blow on the head, whereby it fell off from them, and afterwards it came to two other boats in the said harbour. The men in them, for fear, fled to land. This, I suppose, was a mermaid. Now, because divers have written much of mermaids, I have presumed to relate what is most certain of such a strange creature that was seen at Newfoundland. Whether it were a mermaid or no, I know not. I leave for others to judge. Due to the high authority of the witness, I find this to be an extraordinary case. Whenever one encounters cases in which the lower half goes unseen, there is an understandable temptation to say that, oh, it must have simply been a normal human swimming. And sometimes that seems to be the case. But here, the woman in question had blue hair, and despite being hit on the head by a grown man, said nothing, but simply continued to try to pull herself aboard several different ships. And furthermore, she was watched for quite a while, according to the captain. Surely, if she had walked out of the water onto the beach, he would have seen her. Number 4 is a curious event that occurred in May 1817. The 101-foot whaling ship, the Leonidas, built in 1823 in Somerset, was en route from New York to France along the 44th parallel. One bright afternoon, the crew noticed something about 50 feet away. Here follows the log of its captain, Asa Swift. First part of the day light, variable winds and cloudy. At 2 p.m. on the larboard quarter, at the distance of about half the ship's length, saw a strange fish. Its lower parts were like a fish. Its belly was all white, the top of the back brown, and there was the appearance of short hair as far as the top of its head. From the breast upwards, it had a near resemblance to a human being, and looked upon the observers very earnestly. As it was but a short distance from the ship, all the afternoon we had a good opportunity to observe its motions and shape. No one on board ever saw the like fish before. All believed it to be a mermaid. The second mate, Mr. Stevens, an intelligent young man, told me the face was nearly white, and exactly like that of a human person, that its arms were about half as long as his, with hands resembling his own, that it stood erect out of the water about 2 feet, looking at the ship and sails with great earnestness. It would remain in this attitude close alongside 10 or 15 minutes at a time, and then dive and appear on the other side. It remained around them about 6 hours. Mr. Stevens also stated that its hair was black on the head and exactly resembled a man's, that below the arms it was a perfect fish in form, and that the whole length from the head to the tail about 5 feet. So then, a merman, curiously watching as a wooden aquatic behemoth makes its way through the Atlantic. Did you notice that his back was brown, but his belly was white? I wonder whether this might have been tanning, due to hunting at the surface with his head and belly in the water. His black hair is a reminder that, contrary to popular depictions, the most commonly reported hair colors are shades of green and black. Perhaps the best thing about this encounter was its length. The captain and his crew were able to wonder at it and study its appearance and behavior all afternoon. Some will say that what they saw was a manatee. Manatees seem to be the response to all mermaid sightings, don't they? Doubtless, of the hundreds of encounters humans have had with merfolk, some might have been manatees. But can we take a moment to appreciate the differences between a human and a manatee? This is a manatee. Manatees can be found here. You will notice that they are not native to the British Isles or far out at sea. Now, take a look at this one. This is a female. This is a female. Its breasts are right there, but you can't see them because they are hidden just beneath the flippers. And while manatees' faces are cute, they are nothing like a human's. Now, for the number one best mermaid encounter in recorded history. She was captured in the early 1700s near the island of Borneo in present-day Indonesia. The following is the account of the governor of the islands of Amboin and president of the commissioners in Batavia, Balthazar Coyet, and Adrian van der Stel, the governor-regent of the province of Amboin. This comes from their illustrated encyclopedia of local aquatic life, which I cannot pronounce, but there it is. Sea-wyf, a monster resembling a siren, caught near the island of Borneo, or Boren, in the department of Amboin. It was 59 inches long, and in proportion as an eel. It lived on land, in a vat full of water, during 4 days, 7 hours. From time to time it uttered little cries like those of a mouse. It would not eat, though it was offered small fish, shells, crabs, lobsters, etc. After its death, some excrement was discovered in the vat, like the secretion of a cat. The copy from which I have taken the representation for this work is thus colored. Hair, the hue of kelp. Body, olive tint. Webbed olive between the fingers, which have each 4 joints. The fringe round the waist orange with a blue border. The fins green. Face slate gray. A delicate row of pink hairs runs the length of the tail. There is a lot to unpack here. First, no longer able to swim freely, but boxed into a tub of increasingly dirty water, and unable to communicate with anyone else of her own kind, this must have been an upsetting experience for the creature. No wonder she refused to eat. The poor thing must have been depressed. She would never see home again, but died several days after her capture by strangers. Such a pity. For better or worse, this represents the best sighting in history. She was closely monitored, examined, measured, and interacted with by relatively highly educated people and an expert artist. Now, a word about that. It was said that she appeared in an encyclopedia, and that's true. Now I'd like to show you some of the many other illustrations in the book to give you a better idea as to how detail-focused the artist was. The description of the 4 joints in the webbed fingers is interesting. I'm unaware of any other such creatures, but perhaps I'm mistaken. The mermaid's vocalizations also strike me as interesting. In making this video, I went through many different encounters throughout recorded history. Prior to the new era, some 2,000 years ago, legend held that these creatures could speak and were sought as great expositors of knowledge and wisdom. But in our era, I have been hard-pressed to find any account of a mermaid speaking anything but a language comparable to that of dolphins. When we compare this extraordinary creature, if it is even appropriate to call her a creature and not a person, with number 5 on our list, as well as with the others, it seems that profound speciation has taken place among the merfolk. That is, there seem to be a number of various kinds of mermaid with radically different characteristics. Indeed, I came across many and had to choose which to include here. Some I considered to have likely been manatees, and others I found curiously similar to fabled sea apes. Even now, I have no idea how merfolk could possibly exist, and yet they seem to. They represent a biological absurdity, indeed an impossibility. The problem posed by their unique assortment of fish and human features goes far beyond that presented by, say, the platypus. Fish with scales cannot evolve human heads and torsos with mammalian breasts. They just can't. It's not possible. At least, it's not on the world we know. So there you have it. The top 5 best mermaid sightings in recorded history. What do you think? Do you believe mermaids are real? Are they all manatees? Have fishermen been drinking too much? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.